meeting to order, and pursuant to Standing Order 1062, I think we should first elect a vice chair, because we lost our vice chair from the Conservative Party, if I might say that. So that'll be the first order of business. Before we get to that, I do want to welcome all the new committee members to this committee, and the former committee members too, back again. We've got a lot of work to do on pre-budget consultations already scheduled, and I'm sure there may be the odd other issue come up along the way. So if we could deal with the vice chair, is that the way you want to go, so we've got things organized here? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Turned over to the clerk.
Pursuant to Standing Order 1062, the first vice chair must be a member of the official opposition. I'm now prepared to receive motions for the first vice chair. Mr. Albus.
Mr. Albus.
Just in the order of good process, I nominate Mr. Pierre Poilievre right here. I think he'll do fine.
Il est proposé par Dan Albus.
It is moved by Dan Albus that Pierre Poilievre be elected first vice of this committee.
Is it the pleasure of the committee to adopt the motion? I declare the motion carried, and Mr. Pierre Poilievre duly elected first vice chair of the committee.
Congratulations, then, Mr. Poilievre, for as first vice chair of the committee. Seeing as this is the first meeting on pre-budget consultations in advance of the 2018 budget, just a couple of things, just to explain to all committee members what has been decided to date. I think everyone knows that the Finance Committee is legislated by legislation is to do pre-budget consultations prior to the coming up the budget in the next fiscal year, and that in this case we put out a letter in June inviting submissions. Those submissions came in by early August. And then we had in June as well, we agreed to an established set of hearings in Ottawa and at a number of locations in the west and a number of locations in the east. And from that, we will have to prepare a report of which has to be tabled in the House sometime in December. So that's basically the process for those that are not aware. The committee on these pre-budget consultations, a little different than last year, decided to invite departmental officials to give an outline of the situation in Canada to help members guide their questions to witnesses, for witnesses in future meetings. So finance officials will start with a brief opening statement to kind of set the stage and explain Canada's current situation. Officials from Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, or ISED, I still call it Industry Canada, but I'm old-fashioned, will then provide an overview of programs and initiatives currently available related to the first theme on productivity and competitiveness of Canadian businesses. Officials of ISED will then answer members' questions with support of finance officials who are here as well. In the second panel, officials from Employment and Social Development Canada will provide an overview of the current initiatives and programming related to the second theme, related to Canada's productivity. So our strategy was really to set the stage on the main themes we're looking for the budget. One, what is the financial fiscal situation? Two, what is happening to make the country more productive and competitive in terms of programming from departments involved. It's important to note that if committee members ask questions or that are not related to the main themes for this year's pre-budget consultations, the officials present might not be able to answer those questions. And I know there's a number of other hot topics, and that's why I'm raising that point now. I think there will be other opportunities to raise those topics, but I would like us to start with a good foundation to establish the basis of which we hold pre-budget consultations on. So then, starting with the Department of Finance, we have Mr. Leswick, who's the Assistant Deputy Minister, Economic and Fiscal Policy Branch, Mr. King, who's the Director of Economic Analysis and Forecasting. Can I go through this list and then you raise your point? Mr. Lavoie, Director, Economic Studies and Policy Analysts Division, Economic and Fiscal Policy Branch, and with the Department of Industry I have here, but it's ISED. Miss Sadlaki, as Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategy and Innovation Policy Sector, and Miss Campbell, who's the Director General, Digital Transformation Sector. So, you have a point you want to raise, Mr. Fergus?
Not a point of order, Mr. Chair, but I would seek unanimous consent of all members of the Finance Committee to lift off the table a motion which I had presented or which has been written down, but otherwise would not be able to be considered until, if we were to go by without unanimous consent, until Thursday. And the reason why I lifted off because of the time sensitiveness of it, Mr. Chair, the motion would read that during the week of September 25th to 29th, 2017, the committee hold 2 meetings to hear from witnesses on the tax fairness measures proposed by the Minister of Finance July 18th, 2017. The committee invite the Honourable Bill Morneau, Minister of Finance, to appear during a 3rd meeting of that study, and that the lists of proposed witnesses be submitted to the clerk no later than Thursday, September 21, 2017 at 4 p.m.
Okay, if I could, we had a motion from Mr. Deltel, as well as a motion from you, Mr. Fergus, and Deltel's motion has been placed by one from Mr. Polyev. Both motions are really relating to the same issue. I just asked the committee: is there the motions can be dealt with at the next meeting, which will be the 48 hours to deal with this motion? We need unanimous consent to deal with it. Is there unanimous consent to deal with it? To debate this motion.
Mr. Chair, I wonder why the motion from Mr. Deltel, which I will shepherd forward as his replacement on this committee, is not being dealt with before the one that Mr. Fergus has now moved.
They're both on the agenda, and a motion, a member can lift a motion at any time. We prefer they not be lifted when we have witnesses, but that's the procedure. A member can lift the motion when they see fit by moving it, and so that's what's happening here. It's not in any order of priority, but I would note both. They're substantially the same, with the exception of, I think, Mr. Fergus's motion saying that there'd be basically 3 meetings in which one the Minister of Finance would be at, and the Conservative motion doesn't indicate how many meetings. And Pierre? For either of the 2, unanimous consent would be required. So the unanimous consent is to discuss the motion. If there's not unanimous consent, then it will have to be the 48-hour notice. It would happen on Thursday, right? We can't do it at a irregular meeting. It'd have to be at a regular meeting.
Unless there's unanimous consent for that.
Unless there's unanimous consent. So, It's been raised, it's been requested, is through unanimous consent.
Mr. Chair, I wonder if the motion that Mr. Deltel submitted might be considered first, for unanimous consent, given that it was submitted first.
I'll have to ask the clerk for her opinion on that. I don't think it, and I don't even know if it was considered first, clerk. It, Polyev, it doesn't matter in what order they were received. It is when they're brought up at committee. That's the rule. The advice from the clerk. So,
Mr. Chair, can I ask for a recorded vote on unanimous consent?
well, we haven't decided. Well, yeah, we can have a recorded vote. If you asked, we'll have it. Are we? Is there unanimous consent? Then we'll go to the vote.
No, is there unanimous consent to consider? It's not.
Yeah.
Something
Is
that
there
we can vote
unanimous
on.
consent to consider the motion? Okay.
There is.
Okay.
Debate on
So,
the motion.
debate on the motion. Mr. Fergus, do you want to state your motion, and then I have Mr. Polyev.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all members of the committee on all sides for giving unanimous consent for us to have this debate. It seems that this is in the air, of course. This is an important matter which has been brought up. It's an important proposal which is being brought forward by the Minister of Finance to address the question of tax fairness. It is no surprise to any member around this table that there are folks who feel strongly in favor of this, and there are also some folks who have strong opinions against. Monsieur le Président, c'est certain que
Mr. Chair, certainly this matter, these motions have given rise to a great deal of interest amongst the Canadian population in terms of the participation of Canadians who are submitting their comments to the Department of Finance. We know that since yesterday, members on both sides of the House demonstrated their interest in debating this matter. I think that it's normal, then, in this case, that the Finance Committee should also seize the opportunity to look at the matter in an appropriate way and to invite the Minister of Finance with his departmental officials to appear at this committee so that he and they can answer our questions. And indeed, the questions of Canadians whom we represent, because we seek to represent their interests well, to the best of our knowledge. Quite simply put, Chair, Canadians have their word to say with respect to consultation, and I believe that the Minister of Finance should appear before this committee to indicate that he is listening to what Canadians have to say, Canadians throughout the country, and I believe that we, as members of Parliament and members of this committee, should have the opportunity to ask questions of the Minister and improve our knowledge of the matter in general. I hope that we will be able to do that, and I do know, though, that the period set aside for the consideration of this matter will finish as of October 2nd. So time really will go by very quickly. I would hope that we could submit a witness list immediately and prepare for meetings next week where we will have, I'm sure, a very heavy agenda all week, 3 times. 3. That is the privilege of the Finance Committee in terms of meetings, and I hope that we will be able to discharge our responsibilities fully in this matter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Polyev.
So just a point of clarification, Mr. Chair. The motion calls for a total of 2 meetings to hear witnesses with regards to the tax increases the finance minister has proposed.
Total, as I understand it, a total of 2 plus the minister.
That is correct.
So
for a
2
total.
meetings to hear from witnesses.
That is correct.
2 meetings to hear from witnesses on the biggest reform in our tax system in 40 years. We're going to have 2 meetings. We have had dozens of organizations sign an open letter iterating grave concerns about tax increases as high as 73% on the retirement savings and the maternity leave benefits of our entrepreneurs. 2 meetings to hear from 60 or 70 organizations that represent literally millions of employees on the biggest tax question that may have been put before the House, certainly in my career, but maybe in a full generation. Mr. Chair, this committee is the one that is responsible for the Income Tax Act. That is directly in our jurisdiction. And the member and the governing side, the majority here, want to ram this thing through in 2 meetings. As you know, Mr. Chair, much smaller issues have been discussed for much longer time periods in committees across this parliamentary precinct. And to have the government show up here with a motion seeking to ram this tax increase into effect while hearing from witnesses over just a total of 4 or 5 hours is unprecedented. I mean, in a single meeting, we will be lucky to hear from 4 or 5 witnesses. We have dozens of witnesses that need to testify on this issue. I'm sure the government would be willing to extend the discussion and amend this motion to read that beginning the week of September 25th and continuing until there are no further witnesses interested in testifying, the committee will undertake a study of the finance minister's proposed changes to the Income Tax Act. I ask the honourable member if he would consider that a friendly amendment.
Okay. Mr. Fergus?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm perplexed by my honourable member's suggestion or modification, given that the motion that he had even proposed himself indicates that we should have these consultations, and and he recognizes that due to the closing of the consultation October 2nd, that we should have an appearance by the minister, and I'm assuming also witnesses, before October 2nd, which is of course not next week, but the following week. So given that is a motion proposed by Mr. Deltel, that is a motion that's supported by the honourable member from Carleton, I am perplexed at how substantively our motions are any different. I think for a realistic perspective, if we were to open up the number of sessions until all Canadians who want to appear have been heard, certainly we wouldn't be doing the work that we need to get done on the pre-budget consultations, which are already scheduled for us to take place the following week. So I think it's important, given members' time, that we be very judicious in our suggestion of witnesses to making sure that we bring the most representative groups possible before us for us to have an initial look at this. If the minister and the government were to proceed on these initiatives, they would certainly be bringing them back in a form of legislation, which this committee would have an opportunity to go through at much greater depth. But I think it's important in this period before the consultation period ends that this committee have an opportunity to take a look at this. And it is reasonable for us to say that we'll have 3 sessions on this issue all during next week, in addition to the work which we've already scheduled for the pre-budget consultations. So to answer his question, I would not consider that a friendly modification.
You have your answer, Mr. Polyev. You still have the floor.
Mr. Chair, I want to clarify that the motion that Mr. Deltel put forward was for the committee to return early and dedicate a complete 40-hour work week to hearing witnesses. That was a proposal that failed to garner the support of the Liberal majority, which therefore rendered the motion incapable of passage. So here we are today, a week and a half later, with the House of Commons in session interrupting our ability to do all-day hearings and drastically reduced time periods for consultation. And we're told that our small business people who are worried about a 73% tax rate on their passive investment income, our farmers who are worried about tax treatment that will force them, in many cases, to sell to foreign investors, will have to ram all of that feedback into a 2-day session of, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chair, 3-hour sessions?
That's to be determined. Quite often we'll have 3-hour sessions with 2 panels of 6 every hour and a half.
So we'll have 2 3-hour sessions to hear from Canadians in this committee, the Finance Committee of the Parliament of Canada, to discuss the biggest change to the Income Tax Act in my lifetime. Is that really the government's position on it, consulting Parliament with respect to these changes?
Mr. Dussault?
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. I don't want to extend over much this debate because we do have witnesses here waiting for us today. But one of the things that was said to me in my riding, like many of my other colleagues, was a subject that was brought up by one of my fellow citizens. It dealt with consultations. There is consultation that will end on October 2nd, but it is insufficient. It does not suffice for the scope of the changes that are being proposed. It would be a step in the right direction if the government would agree to hearing witnesses about these consultations. I don't want to demonstrate any type of lack of understanding about the process that we'll be following, but as my colleague has said, we're very far from having a bill before us, a bill that will require very detailed study in committee once it gets here. I think it would be a good initiative once we have the bill, a definitive bill, to have consultations as well, so that we can have an in-depth conversation about what is being proposed by the government. What they are proposing is something of very short duration for the Minister of Finance today. I believe that this consultation does not suffice, but I would like to hear the Minister of Finance. I would like to hear him at greater length. If it can't be before October 2nd, in view of the gravity of the subject and the urgency, perhaps the committee could ask for a longer period of time to consult the Department of Finance that would allow the committee to make recommendations with respect to this matter. We can give our opinion here in the committee before there is a draft bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess this is going to be a session filled with fact-checking because actually the reason Mr. Deltel's motion did not move forward was because it failed to get 4 signatures in order to do so, not at the decision of the government members. And in regards to Mr. Deltel's motion, it didn't even specify how many hours. Thankfully, Mr. Fergus put forward a motion that dealt with the details to bring something forward, as Mr. Dusso rightfully pointed out, the fact that this is fitting in with a consultation period period to hear about the white paper that was released by the Minister of Finance. And if such time that legislation should come forward, this committee would have the opportunity, like we would for any other piece of legislation that is finance related, to properly study it, write a report, draft recommendations, make amendments. I prefer not to waste the committee's time in dealing with hypotheticals and rather get to the business of this House. And one of that being, and I'm wondering if the Conservative members are actually suggesting that hearing from Canadians on their priorities for the 2018 budget is not important and that we should not be hearing from them because Conservative members only want to talk about one thing. Because I think Canadians want to have the consultation process move forward and then the minister to take that information and determine how he wants to move forward in the form of legislation. And at that time, it is for this committee to study it. But I think having 2 hearings plus 1 for the minister to appear will allow for formal consultation from this committee to be sent to the minister for him to consider. And at such time that legislation comes forward, we'll move in the normal process. But I think hearing from Canadians on their priorities for the budget is quite significant and quite important, and I would be shocked if Conservative members were no longer interested in that.
Mr. Albas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome back, everyone. I'm obviously respectful of our guests here who work very hard for Canadians, and I do apologize that we've taken this turn and instead of focusing on our pre-budget consultation process, Liberals have decided to go this way, but you know, that's democracy, and so I'm glad that we can have this discussion. First of all, when someone says reasonable, usually it's reasonable to them. It's the same when someone says, as Raj will know, being a lawyer, the first person to say fair in Canada usually gets what they want because everyone wants to be fair and reasonable. The problem we have with this is, first of all, there is limited time, and the majority of the witnesses that would be coming forward in this proposal will be Liberal government suggested witnesses, the majority of them. That's how the system works. And so we are going to hear from people that side conveniently with the government. Now, if members are concerned on this side that it's not going to be a complete picture, that's, I think, is a legitimate concern. And so far, members, despite using language of reasonable and fair, have not been able to convince this side, nor, I would imagine, many people across the country. So I would suggest that if members are really serious, and if it is a privilege to be on the Finance Committee, which I do agree with, then perhaps maybe we should just say, let's have a few more meetings, or let's make sure that those meetings are meaningful and that we have as many people come in, and perhaps maybe they shouldn't just be all from the side of the government. Perhaps the government might say, we'll take 50% of the witnesses, all right, or even 40%, and then allow the voices that are begging to be heard. And believe me, and you all get the same emails that I do. You all get the same phone calls. People want to be heard on this. So to dismiss the desire for members on this side to have a good discussion and to do our jobs, it should not be dismissed, and it should not be simply cast aside as saying that they're not taking things seriously. We are.
Mr. Sabera, just so we're clear where we're at here. Am I to understand, Greg, that if we hold these two hearings plus the minister, that the committee, this motion is not saying there should be a report, that this committee would send that evidence off the discussions to the minister and to the department as part of their departmental consultations. And to break down the witnesses, it would be roughly 14 witnesses from the government side, 7 or 8 from the Conservatives, and 2 or 3 from the NDP. That would be the breakdown. Okay, Mr. Sabero. That's if we go by the way it's traditionally done, and at this committee, we don't always do it that way. We try and go to the best witnesses no matter where they come from.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merci. I'd just like to make sure we fully understand Mr. Fergus's very reasonable motion he's put forward. There is a consultation period that is ongoing. It has been ongoing since July 18th. It's about, I think, approximately a 75-day consultation period that Canadians, rather in the form of individuals or in the form of organizations, can submit their views on the consultative paper that was put forward. There is no bill in front of us right now that we're examining with regards to the consultative paper and the content of the consultative paper. I think having the minister here to answer some questions from yourselves and from ourselves is an opportunity for everyone to put their thoughts on the record, and I think that's something that I would welcome. I think that's something that the business community that I represent would welcome, and the residents that I represent would welcome. I don't see why we wouldn't want to do that. Having 3 meetings at the outset on this would be something that should be welcomed by all participants. J'espère que mes collègues.
I hope that my colleagues.
I'm prepared to sit in the morning for an extra 9 hours and then do the pre-budget consultations in the afternoon. I think that's a moderate suggestion. I think that's reasonable on whichever side of the aisle we're on. And I look forward to hopefully doing that with our friends from the ministries here. Hopefully if we can move forward to their testimony and getting down to the work that we need to do and for our pre-budget consultation for that we are mandated or legislated to do, whichever term you would like to use. So those are my humble thoughts, and I hope we can move forward with the meetings next week. Merci beaucoup pour ton temps.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Then, just so we're clear on, so we are talking 2 meetings of 3 hours with witnesses. The deadline for witnesses is Thursday night. We'll have a conference call with the subcommittee to determine those witnesses, I'd suggest, on Friday morning, if that's the case. And then the minister and all next week. That's what I'm hearing. Okay, yes, Dan?
Yeah, is there any willingness to see where we have a different split as far as witnesses go? Because again, this is slanted in the government's perspective. This is their motion, your call on as far as the amount of time. I'd like to see more, but could we at least make sure that there's a broad representation of the concerns, not just people that are going to cheerlead?
Ms. O'Connell.
Chair, usually that's been done at the subcommittee, and it's usually done quite well in the sense that we get out of the way who everyone agrees to, and that doesn't take up, a Conservative or NDP spot, and it's, as the chair has said, usually done in a way that it's the best witness, and we tend not to go on the breakdown. So whomever comes on the subcommittee then can work that out depending on who you submit. But I'm not prepared to get into a debate on numbers here until we know how many witnesses are submitted and where there are duplicates.
Mr. Albus, sorry.
Well, just in response to that, you may not be prepared, but obviously Mr. Fergus was prepared to debate this today because we gave unanimous consent to have this. So the question is there. Are you willing to allow more people that are not just simply going to be chosen by the Liberal side? And, further than that, Mr. Chair, to say that we should let the committee do its work, the subcommittee, it's in camera. It's conveniently won't be today. And again, it sounds like Liberal members are trying to deflect away from the suggestion. You know, the same as I, that people are either A, worried, or B, very upset. So can we make sure that we have a proper allocation? Can we at least say 50-50? I think that's fair. That's reasonable.
I think we will have to discuss that at the subcommittee if we can. What I'm hearing is there is you are right. There is people worried and concerned, and I think that we need to have witnesses that can outline the scope from a fairly expert opinion of what the issues are that would add to the minister's consultation process, and there will be some in favor and some opposed. I don't even expect all the witnesses from the government side would be entirely in favor of the legislation or the proposal or the consultation.
Well, to be fair, since we're having this debate, the Liberals have asked for this debate, Mr. Chair. I put forward a motion asking that it be split, the witnesses be split 50-50, and I asked for a recorded vote.
We have a motion on the table at the moment.
Sub-amendment,
okay. It is an amendment. Any discussion on that amendment? Pierre.
Where am I on in
You're the first one on the. Where you are in this debate, Mr. Albus has put a motion that the witness list be split 50-50 between the. Yes, you're right. Where are you? You're third party.
I guess I'm in the opposition 50.
Your numbers would have to go up somewhat as well. But what I'm hearing Mr. Albus saying if we get 24 witnesses, 12 should come from that side of the table and 12 should come from that side of the table.
Okay. So well, 50 of this table side. 50,
then
50?
If the motion carries, I guess you're all by yourself there. You'll have to get in gear to take on 3 others.
All right.
Okay. The sub-amendment is that the witness list be split 50-50 between the opposition parties and the government. A recorded vote, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Fergus.
No.
Mr. Sabera.
Je dis no.
Ms. O'Connell.
Say no.
Mr. Graywell.
No.
Mr. McLeod.
No.
Mr. Poliev.
Yes.
Mr. Albus.
Oui.
Mr. Kimiet.
Yes.
Mr. Dussault.
Oui.
Yes.
Motion is sub-amendment. The amendment is lost. On the original motion, do you want to go ahead?
Just to show that 50-50 obviously isn't fair.
Okay. All those in favor of the original.
Chair, I'd like a recorded vote, please.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Kamish.
Mr. Chair.
Kamish.
So, as a new member of the committee replacing Ron Lightford, which I'm sure you'll all miss for his sunny personality.
I actually
a great guy.
miss Ron a lot. Yeah.
Everybody would like that one.
Tommy, you have big shoes to fill.
Yeah. I wanted to ask a question about the second bullet on the motion, because this is the committee I was on before on Foreign Affairs didn't have as many motions because we were more collegial, it seems, than here, and we didn't surprise each other. Just like Ron. On the study, does this imply that we'll be providing recommendations to the Ministry of Finance and the Minister of Finance by next week? Because this reads, the week of September 25th to 29th, 2017. So therefore, we'd hold those 2 meetings, have a 3rd meeting, and thereafter we would draft a report with recommendations in it. What's implied by all this study?
It was not my. I did not mean to imply that the report would be written by the end of next week.
But
It
what,
could, if the.
it was my understanding, Mr. Commish, when I asked the question earlier, that the record of the consultation, the record of the hearings that we hold here with 24 witnesses would be provided to the minister as part of those consultations without recommendations. They would just be part of the consultations that ends on October 2nd. That's my understanding. That we would also have the minister next week after the witnesses, so that'd be Thursday or Friday, I gather, in which then committee members can go at it in terms of the minister and where he's at and what we've heard from some of those people who appeared before this committee and your own personal feelings as well. That's my understanding. Is that the way it is?
That would be.
So I share obviously many of the same concerns of my colleagues on this side. So we'll basically be also providing the minister with his own comments from the committee transcript and his own viewpoints back to him that he made here during the committee. Obviously, he agrees with his own proposals. I would assume that otherwise he wouldn't have made them in the dead of summer to surprise everybody. I see, Mr. Chair, you sort of agree with that point. So yeah, I have very serious concerns about just the process this is going to go through, because 6 hours is really insufficient for this type of review or study, I guess, a study with no recommendations that we're supposed to go through, and in such a rushed way. And not to go over with the witness issue again, the committees I've been on don't do it quite this way. We don't rush a study, especially on an issue that is taking up significant amount of the public interest. I mean, I have, Okotoks Dental, one of the dentists there has told me that they have concerns. They wrote me a letter. I have it with me. I have entire clippings of just today's emails to me. So we know there's a lot of interest from people, and it shouldn't just be associations and groups who represent others, but we should actually be talking to actual business owners who can bring their spreadsheets of their business and show the type of damage that this might do to their individual business. That will not be possible to rush someone like that at the last minute, giving them 4 days opening next week when they could come in and speak to the committee and present their own balance sheets, their own retirement plans, to demonstrate an actual physical example of a bakery, Canadian Dental in my riding, or whoever that else may be. Not just associations speaking at a 30,000-foot level, but down to the actual person, the mother running her store, the siblings who come together to form a business. That type of example will not be possible like this, because small business owners can't just leave their business at the last minute.
Okay, I have one more person on the list. Mr. Fergus, do you want to close debate? Then we'll go to the question, then we'll go to the witnesses.
I think, Mr. Speaker, just my limited experience here on the Finance Committee, that what we would do, as we have done in other short studies that we've had, where an issue has come up, that of important issue, I refer to the banking practices issue, or the marketing practices of our Schedule I banks. We also, not only do we have witnesses who came and testified here, which was very important for them to do, but nous avons aussi, Monsieur le Président.
We also have agreed and accepted written submissions from Canadians who wanted to testify, but were not able to come and testify in person. So I think it's quite acceptable for us to keep this on. We know not only are there persons, individuals, or groups who represent associations, but there are also individuals who would be interested. Individuals, well, I can think of a variety of people who've contacted me personally on this matter as well. Some are in favor of it, others are against the proposal. I find it quite normal that we proceed with the tradition of this committee.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to make another amendment, Mr. Chair. Simply, Mr. Comich has rightly raised the question of should the minister be providing his own consultation. I wouldn't hate to put your minister in that kind of position, so perhaps we should exclude his testimony to himself, just out of a case of practicality and fairness. Many people, I think, would be extremely aggravated to find out that we would be sending testimony presented by the finance minister to himself. Because A, I'm sure they would take issue with some of the statements, but B, also it does not run a clean consultation process. And I know members of Parliament want to do right by the Canadian people.
Is there any problem with that we send the, do we need an amendment or can we do this by agreement? Are we okay with just sending the witnesses' testimony to the Departmental of Finance consultations and not include the minister's testimony?
That's fine.
We're okay on that. Mr. Kamish, and then can we go to a vote on this?
Just Mr. Chair, Mr. Fergus had an interesting idea, which is to allow for written submissions from people who don't have the time because running a business to provide their input to the committee. Who will be receiving that? Is there an email address? Should it be directed to the clerk or to you, Mr. Chair?
It would be the clerk, but I'm getting, I think we probably all are getting some copies of submissions that are going into the Department of Finance on the views that are already out there. So is that adequate or not?
I would say that if this is anything more than just a PR move by the government side, that they should be quite open and that we should be open.
We can put that button on the website if that's your wish to do so. Okay? Then the button will go up on the website to do that, and that will be transferred to the consultations as well. Okay. On the question on the original motion, Dan?
Just want to thank people for being reasonable and somewhat fair on some of these extra provisions.
All right. What a great way to start. All those, did somebody say they wanted to recorded vote on this? Okay, recorded vote. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Fergus.
In favor. Oui.
Mr. Cervera.
Je suis d'accord.
I'm in agreement.
Mr. Graywall.
Yes.
Mr. McLeod.
Yes.
Mr. Poilievre.
No.
Mr. Albus.
No.
Mr. Kimiet.
No.
Mr. Zot.
Oui.
Motion is carried. Okay, then if we could turn to the Department of Finance. What we're going to do is we said we'd adjourn at 5:30 and already told some people we would. We will go 40 minutes with the first panel and 40 minutes with the second, if that is okay. All right, Mr. Leswick with the Department of Finance.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, honorable members. My name is Nick Leswick. I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister of the Economic and Fiscal Policy Branch at the Department of Finance, with overall responsibility for economic and fiscal forecasting and the production of the federal budget. As requested by the committee, in my opening remarks this afternoon, I will briefly speak about recent economic developments in Canada as a background to your overall theme of productivity and competitiveness that you'll be exploring through the course of your pre-budget consultations. So, from the beginning of 2015 until mid-2016, Canadian economic developments were dominated by the large, rapid, and sustained drop in global crude oil prices. Those prices, measured in terms of West Texas Intermediate US dollars per barrel, fell from over $100 in late 2014 to lows of under $30 in early 2016. The impact of this drop on Canada's economy was significant. The dollar value of Canadian oil exports fell by nearly $70 billion. This was a significant hit to national income, equivalent to about 3.5% of national GDP. As a result, investment in the oil sector plummeted, falling by an estimated 60%, or more than $50 billion. Along with it, employment in oil-producing provinces, particularly Alberta, but also Saskatchewan and Newfoundland and Labrador, fell by a combined 150,000 jobs.
While these three provinces bore the brunt of the shock, its impacts were felt across the country. Real GDP in Canada contracted during the first and second quarters of 2015, and for that year as a whole, expanded by less than 1%. Since mid-2016, however, economic developments have turned around markedly. Real GDP has expanded by an average rate of 3.7% per quarter for the last 4 quarters. Alongside this much stronger output growth has come very strong employment growth. It is estimated that employment has risen by over 350,000 jobs since mid-2016, and the unemployment rate has fallen from about 7% to just above 6% over the same period. What caused this turnaround? Several factors have been at play. First, and probably most important, has been the stabilization and rebound in economic activity in energy-producing provinces, particularly Alberta. This has been facilitated by the bottoming out, rise, and evident stabilization of oil prices at somewhere between $45 and $53 per barrel since the beginning of February last year. The pickup also reflects the fact that cuts to investment have largely run their course. In fact, during the first quarter of this year, oil sector investment was up on a year-over-year basis for the first time since the end of 2014. It was up again compared to the same period last year in the second quarter of 2017. A stabilization in investment has also meant stabilization in the job cuts associated with that investment. The fall in employment in Alberta, for example, halted in mid-2016, and job levels in the province have shown slow but steady gains since then. The Canadian dollar has also depreciated relative to its U.S. counterpart over this period. The dollar has averaged about 90 cents in U.S. dollar terms in late 2014, before falling to just over 70 cents in early 2016. This depreciation has provided important support to our export sector. Altogether, these developments are what has been described as the slow and complex adjustment to lower oil prices. This simply means the reallocation of labor and capital to other areas of the economy, facilitated by monetary policy, fiscal policy, and a flexible exchange rate. For the large part, and at the macro level, these adjustments appear to be over. However, on more individual level, there are certainly families, communities, and firms that continue to feel the impacts of the oil price decline. Beyond the stabilization in the energy sector, a number of other factors have helped affect the sharp turnaround in Canada's economic performance. Firstly, we have seen very robust housing market activity over the last year in Vancouver, Toronto, and surrounding regions. This has helped to support regional and national GDP growth. Also, there has been a stabilization and pickup in the global economy. The U.S. economy is meeting expectations, conditions in the Eurozone have firmed, as has growth in China. This more positive global environment has undoubtedly helped to support our exports, but equally importantly, business confidence and prospects about future sales. The expectation of future sales growth, both domestic and abroad, is encouraging firms to invest in productive capacity to meet this increased demand. This can be seen in survey data on business expectations, as well as actual data on investment spending. While not strong yet, investment in Canada has shown signs over the last 2 quarters of responding positively to these domestic and international developments. Monetary policy in Canada has also been providing, to use specific words of the Bank of Canada, considerable stimulus. And in conjunction with monetary policy, a number of fiscal measures have been introduced by the federal government over the last 2 years, which have helped to support income growth and general economic growth. These include middle-class tax cuts, incremental infrastructure spending, and enhanced Canada Child Benefit. Combined, all of these factors are resulting in stronger and more broad-based economic growth across the country. For example, the unemployment rate in the province of Quebec is at its lowest level since 1976. Ontario has posted its longest back-to-back stretch of 2% or above real GDP growth since the mid-1980s. And in British Columbia, the economy has created almost 150,000 new jobs since the beginning of last year. This is all very positive and good news. Stronger, broader-based growth means that more solid economic momentum will likely continue over the coming quarters. Higher growth has generated higher employment and income gains, which has led to higher demand and thus higher output growth, and so on, in a so-called virtuous circle. However, the very strong rates of growth that we have seen over the last four quarters are highly unlikely to continue. There are a number of structural reasons for this. The bounce back in the energy-producing regions is just that, a bounce back. Growth rates will eventually plateau and ease. As well, we have seen notable cooling in the Toronto and Golden Horseshoe housing markets recently. This will also take some strength out of recent GDP growth rates. The Canadian economy still also faces uncertainty relating to policy developments and direction in the United States. Over the medium term, we also face a number of well-known structural challenges. These include demographic pressures brought on by population aging, and more specific to today's session, a relatively weak productivity performance in Canada. On that, both my colleagues from Finance Canada and colleagues from ISED and ESDC will hopefully be able to respond to your questions. Thank you for the opportunity to make the opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leswick. Turning then to first round, and we'll stick to 5 minutes. Oh, industry's going to do their own. Sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Sedlacki.
Thank you. So on behalf of Krista Campbell and myself, I'd like to thank you for having us here to discuss Canadian productivity and competitiveness, something we live and breathe every day at ISED. We know that Canada is operating in a slow growth economic environment, and while the economy has grown strongly in recent quarters, as indicated by my colleague at Finance, significant expansion remains uncertain. And even though Canada's economy is performing better than expected, the Bank of Canada still projects modest growth of 2% for 2018 and 1.6% in 2019. This speaks to the ongoing need to look beyond the more traditional policy prescriptions of the past. Monetary policy, sound macro fundamentals, and competitive tax rates are critical, but no longer sufficient. The current structure of our support for business innovation requires modernization to generate greater impact and allow for the flexibility needed to succeed in these uncertain times. If we want to see transformative results, we need to move beyond funding. We need to rethink and modernize our policy toolkit with one that places an emphasis on both innovation and inclusiveness. I truly believe that is what we are doing. We are looking at new approaches to improve our efficiency and effectiveness and provide the tools that business needs to succeed. Budget 27 put a focus on innovation. What I want to focus on today is how we see building growth through innovation. It is key to Canadian competitiveness, better jobs, and greater prosperity for all Canadians. We have a significant long-term growth problem caused by slowing productivity performance and an aging population. The main driver for building growth is innovation. It builds opportunities and increases Canada's growth potential. In a higher cost, higher wage economy, innovation is crucial for inclusive growth. So let me highlight several core areas on our approach to innovation as set out in Budget 2017. Beginning with attracting global talent. To grow Canadian businesses, create more Canadian jobs, and compete among the best in the world, we must also attract the best minds. The government's global skills strategy does just that. It will make it easier for Canadian businesses to attract the talent they need to succeed. It provides an ambitious 2-week standard for processing visas and work permits for low-risk, high-skilled talent for companies doing business in Canada. This will ensure that high-growth Canadian companies that need to access global talent can do so to facilitate and accelerate investments that create jobs and growth. But we also need to develop talent at home. We need to equip Canadians with the skills and tools they need to succeed in a changing economy. It is important that Canadians have the right mix of tools and experiences to not only participate in the economy, but to lead it. For example, ISED launched the Can Code initiative, which will ensure that Canadian youth have the digital and coding skills necessary to succeed in this digital economy. We are also looking to enable an organization by the name of MyTax to create 10,000 work-integrated learning placements for Canadian post-secondary students and graduates to ensure that they have the skills needed to thrive when they enter the workforce. It will grow the number of Canadians equipped with STEM through initiatives such as Promo Science, and it provides new funding to attract and retain top researchers through a pan-Canadian artificial intelligence strategy to promote deep learning in new and groundbreaking areas in Canada. Combined, this skills plan will encourage continuous learning, increase experiential learning opportunities, and encourage business investment in the upskilling of their employees. You would have all heard of the Superclusters initiative. Evidence around the world points to the disproportionate impact, positive impact, of innovation superclusters. We don't need to look further than Silicon Valley to see the huge effect they can have on growth. They create jobs, encourage knowledge sharing, drive business specialization, and help to attract anchor companies from around the world. Canada has no innovation supercluster in the top global innovation ecosystems, but Budget 2017 laid out a plan to change this. Launched in May, ISED is providing up to $950 million to support up to 5 business-led innovation superclusters that have the greatest potential to accelerate economic growth. We are focused on superclusters that will enhance Canada's global competitiveness by looking at highly innovative industries. It is to help companies succeed in the global marketplace with new products, processes, and opportunities to grow, and connect Canadian companies with globally integrated supply chains. Government as a first buyer. What is also evident from other models like the US is that the government as a first customer is crucial for innovation startups and the development of innovative products. The plan is to launch a new procurement program, Innovative Solutions Canada, to encourage innovation and support early-stage research and development and late-stage prototypes from Canadian innovators and entrepreneurs. Government-tested and validated Canadian technologies will help Canadian businesses to scale and find new customers around the world. Capital. The future of the Canadian economy will be significantly impacted by the capacity of Canadian firms to grow domestically and compete internationally. And high-growth firms account for a disproportionate number of new jobs and tend to invest more in technology development and generate knowledge spillovers that other firms can harvest. To support the growth of innovative companies, the budget announced a venture capital catalyst initiative to continue to increase the availability of VC in technology. The Innovation and Skills Plan also included nearly $1.4 billion in new financing through the BDC and EDC to boost the growth of Canada's clean technology sector. This will not only foster the growth of Canadian technologies and companies, but also help us meet our climate change goals. Scale requires global markets, access to global supply chains, and integration into global investment networks. Through our approach and associated measures, the government is enhancing global markets through trade agreements, rolling out CETA, which occurs this week, and looking at trade agreements with other partners such as Asia. Earlier this year, the government announced the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, which will increase opportunities for all Canadian business to innovate and expand at home. A big part of the Innovation and Skills Plan is innovation within government. We are too large a part of the economy not to have an innovation focus. We recognize this, and through this budget, we are doing our part through the creation of Innovation Canada. This new platform within ISED will coordinate and simplify the support available to Canada's innovators, making it easier and faster for them to find and access government programs and services. As part of this, we, in collaboration with the Treasury Board Secretariat, we have also initiated a whole-of-government review of business innovation programs, reviewing dozens of innovation programs across government to see how they can be consolidated and simplified. This will reduce the amount of legwork required and give entrepreneurs more timely access to innovation services. A key first step was the creation of the Strategic Innovation Fund, a new streamlined approach to support existing sectors like autos and aerospace, but at the same time expanding support to dynamic and emerging sectors like clean technology and agri-food. We are also in the process of developing economic strategy tables in 6 key areas for Canada. These tables will examine sector challenges and bottlenecks to innovation and lay out strategies to overcome them. While it will take time to implement, our ultimate goal is to modernize what we offer and how we deliver business innovation programming to Canadians. We also know we need to enhance IP education, improve clarity in IP laws, and improve incentives for firms to protect their IP. We are working on a national strategy that will provide firms with the certainty and freedom they need to operate in international markets. In conclusion, Canada has real innovation strengths, yet we continue to lag behind key competitors. Canada needs to continue to modernize its policy toolkit to better support and encourage innovation and inclusive growth. We need to put in place a new framework for doing business, recognizing the importance of talented people, access to risk capital, innovation ecosystems, the need for government as a first customer, and increased access to global markets. We need to put in place the right measures today that will ensure Canada remains a player on the world stage, able to compete and keep pace with global leaders. Budget 2018 presents an opportunity to continue to build off the gains made from the Innovation and Skills Plan and leverage partnerships through a whole-of-government approach to further implement the government's agenda of innovation-led economic growth. My colleagues and I look forward to taking any questions you may have to further discussion on Canadian competitiveness and productivity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Then we'll go to questions. If we could take about 6 questions, 4 minutes each. Mr. Fergus, you're first up.
Tout d'abord, merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
First of all, thank you to both of our witnesses for the interesting presentations. It seems to me that it's very rare where you encounter a situation where the economic recovery coincides with, well, each time a government has a certain number of tools at its disposal to help the economy recover. It's very rare that there is that it is on time, that it coincides. Very often there is a lag time that is evident between what is done and the effect of the tool in the kit that has been applied. You have pointed out we are in a very enviable situation, that there has been a stabilization of economic activity in our provinces, where we find the energy sector. And secondly, there are elements that are being presented by ISET or Employment and Development Canada that will also be taking a position on this in the future, the near future. I have a question for you. Taking into account the fact that the economy is strong, that employment is rising, that growth is firmly anchored and more general throughout the country, can you tell us if the measures that we are introducing for the Canadian economy, will they have the possibility of ensuring continuing good development in Canada, good economic growth, maybe not as marked as over this past year, but better than perhaps over the past 10 years where we only had very anemic growth in Canada?
I do not want this question in terms of the economy to get into whether what the other guys did was good or bad or vice versa. We're sticking to the basis of the economy, where it's at, and we're not getting into policy. I'll understand that, Mr. Leswick, and then Ms. Sedlackway.
No, thank you very much for the question by the member, and I think it's clear. I mean, just as you started your question, I mean, the so-called policy toolkit in terms of both the monetary and policy responses to, I guess, weakness in the economy, I think is fairly clear. I mean, the Bank of Canada has responded with, quoting them, what they would characterize as considerable stimulus with respect to their policy rate and how that flows through to ultimate residential and commercial lending rates. And likewise, from a fiscal policy perspective, I mean, if we rewind the clock in early 2016, we were facing what seemed like pretty extreme economic weakness, both domestically, growth was lagging, and internationally, we saw some signs, whether it be south of the border in the United States, where people were speculating about the United States teetering into recession, and beyond the borders of the United States, in China, where they were going through this extreme financial market volatility. So fiscal measures in that context were helpful, and you talk about the fiscal policy toolkit. There was both the combination of the Canada Child Benefit, which effectively contributed about $4 or $5 billion into the Canadian economy. So more of just kind of a raw injection, like a raw income support. And then a suite of also infrastructure measures, some kind of those shovel-ready infrastructure measures where there was kind of plans and hiring that were able to be deployed fairly quickly. But then I think getting maybe to the core of your question, some longer-term infrastructure measures which were designed to enhance kind of the longer-term productive capacity of the Canadian economy. But infrastructure is not going to do all the heavy lifting here. I mean, we're still facing these demographic challenges. We're facing these productivity challenges. There's a lot of indications that tell us we are already, in comparative terms, our capital labor ratio, like our capital stock is pretty good. Maybe we're overinvested in kind of engineering structures and in the energy sector, but and less invested in kind of those productivity enhancing machinery and equipment. But yeah, it's not just infrastructure. It's going to be a combo platter of a lot of other things, whether it be skills development, which I think we'll hear from ESTC in the later half of the testimony, kind of doubling down on some of our sector strategies and innovation strategy to really start to kind of boost long-term growth potential of the Canadian economy.
Ms. Sedlacque?
I think I'd add a couple of points building off of that. One is that when our minister undertook a number of consultations to support the work that we've done on innovation, and we clearly heard from companies that skills and talent were one of their major concerns, and it continues to be so. So I think. Are we making the right investments for the long term? I think yes, and especially in that regard. There are a number of other areas that I outlined in my opening remarks as well. The other thing I would say is that the work that we're doing now is really engaging all Canadians, all stakeholders, because we can't do this alone. We really need to mobilize the business community, citizens, the not-for-profit sector. Everybody needs to be contributing to the agenda, and I think that that is another area where we've done quite a bit of work, and I think we are. Those are the kinds of partnerships and relationships that sustain the kind of momentum that we are seeing now, and that we think are really important in continuing the progress that we're making. I mentioned that we're undertaking a horizontal review, which will reveal likely some changes that would make things even better in terms of the business innovation programming ecosystem. And then last but certainly not least, we've put a really big focus on tracking results. And this is really intended to guide any future changes that need to be made, and gives a degree of ambition not only for the work that we do and the policies that we put in place, but also for the stakeholders with whom we are partnering on all of these.
Thank you both. Mr. Polyev.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Are the Finance Canada officials able to answer questions about the proposed tax changes Minister Morneau announced in July?
Very respectfully, Mr. Chair, no, we're not the right people to talk to about that.
Fair enough.
We did invite them just on the basis of the economy, Pierre.
Enough said.
Next week.
Debt management strategy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the 2016 year, there was a very large volume of bond auction because of the number of bonds that were coming up for maturity and the return to deficit, and that the government auctioned off over $100 billion of bonds in that year. Is that your recollection of that year?
I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, but I would agree that our financial source requirement with respect to funding the government operations, because of the budgetary outlook, would have increased, I believe, in that year.
Now, I understand that your department consulted with the market in order to ascertain its desired for the terms of those bonds. And as a result of those consultations, it indicates that the market was looking to purchase 2, 3, and 5-year maturities. Is that your recollection of the consultations? It's what it says in the debt management section of the 2016 budget documents.
Again, very respectfully, I wasn't responsible for those consultations, and we'd have to bring, my counterpart in the financial sector policy branch, who's responsible for the debt management strategy, to answer, I think, probably your line of questioning or where you're going with your question.
Do you have any knowledge of what terms the department periods the Department of Finance concluded on in general on the debt that it issued in the last 2 years?
I can't speak to the specifics of the term structure of our debt.
All right. The government released a document today in which it talked about the financial situation of the country, and it demonstrated that there is projected to be an increase in the 10-year government bond of roughly a third to double. And that means that Canadians over time will be paying more interest on the debt we hold, even if that debt were to stay constant. Is the government making a decision to sell 30 and 10-year bonds in order to lock in today's low interest rates before rates begin to rise?
I think, with respect to the debt management strategy, it's a balancing act between, the cost-risk dynamics of the maturity of our debt, likewise the need to, price discovery need in capital markets for each of our debt issuances. So again, I'd probably advise, just to make sure that you're well informed and your questions are properly answered, to invite my counterpart from the financial sector policy branch. Sorry, Mr. Member.
We can do that at some point in time. Go ahead, Pierre.
All right. What are the long-term projections for interest rates that the Finance Department is relying on?
Well, we surveyed a group of 14 private sector economists, and we surveyed them across a variety of economic indicators, long-term interest rates being one of those indicators. So in our last published survey in Budget 2017, the 10-year government bond rate was expected to be 1.8% in 2017, rising to some 3.3% by 2021. That's effectively our forecast period. And we take those, forecasted interest rates and bring them into our long-term liabilities, as you referenced, Mr. Member, the debt strategy and our non-market debt, so things like public sector pensions and benefits.
Can you just list those two numbers again from?
Yes, sir. In 2017, the projection for the 10-year government bond rate, so Canada's bond rate, is 1.8%, rising to 3.3% by the end of the forecast horizon, so 2021.
So that is a very large increase. It might sound like only a few percentage points, but really is double. So the cost of borrowing is expected to double by 2021. Yeah,
roughly. I mean, just as a color commentary to the honourable member, I mean, we've got interest rates projections wrong over the last 20 years. So, I mean, yes, this projection is reflective of an expectation of growth and
right.
a neutral rate of interest.
No, I appreciate that, and we don't expect you to have a crystal ball. I prefer always to predict the past versus the future, but I think it's fair to say that things ain't going to get any better for people borrowing than right now. The interest rates are going nowhere but up, and would you not agree that that means that the cost of servicing debt is going to go up with them?
Well, I think I'd agree with the member. I mean, 80% of people in the residential mortgage market choose fixed-rate mortgages these days, and the average term structure of their debt is around 4 years, so they're deciding to lock in. That being said, I mean, you know, we had the same debate, 7 years ago, with other ministers and other deputy ministers, and you know, it really is about managing kind of those cost-risk dynamics and also answering to the kind of liquidity requirements of the market.
Mr. Dessau.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to our witnesses today for having taken the time to come here, even though we began a bit late with them. My question perhaps is directed to Mr. Leswick, who could answer. I really appreciated your comments with respect to the inclusive growth a little earlier on. We hope that growth will continue to be there and will be something that will benefit more people. This is one of the indicators that we look at. To that, I want to ask about the indicators that deal with economic inequality. Do you have any statistics with respect to economic inequality in Canada? What is the picture that you can draw for us about that? And what measures are you taking to try to improve the situation, to improve the picture for them?
Colleague, Mr. Claude to answer the question. He's the closest to the research with respect to this particular issue.
Merci beaucoup pour votre question.
Thank you very much for your question. Clearly, we're following the issue of inequality very closely. If you look, for example, at the distribution of wealth amongst the different groups in Revenue Canada, over the past 40 years with respect to market revenues and the labor market in particular. What is happening is that the rich have gotten richer much faster than the poor have gotten better off in terms of distribution of wealth. But if you look at a different situation, before tax situation, once you do so, you can see in terms of distribution of growth, a more equal type of growth across the board. Maybe not of 0.1%, but nonetheless a system that is reflecting growth. But I don't know if it will continue to reflect that type of steady growth in the future. Perhaps so. One of the indicators that is used is a coefficient for inequality. Is when you look at the 40% of the richest in the population or of the poorest in the population in the 1990s, when we had the recession of 1990 and then 80 to 90, we see that there has been greater stability since the year 2000. With respect to that, we can say that Canada is in about the middle of the ranking in terms of other countries. We're more or less at the middle of the ceiling, if you like. I don't know if that answers your question. It's a real problem, this issue of inequality. Perhaps one of the ways of moving to solve it is through income tax and the transfer of social programs, for example. But for the rest of the time that I have, I would like to speak to the transition towards a new economy. What we are seeing here before us is a transition in the economy, which is greener in terms of the environment, but also more technological. This is my question. With respect to labor, is there enough labor force available to deal with this transition? And is there a challenge for the government in the future to try to fulfill the needs of the new economy? I'm going to ask my colleague, Krista Campbell, to take your question. and our other colleagues that will be coming afterwards will be able to give you further detail about it. Thank you for your question.
The approach that the government has taken recently on thinking about the overall supply of labor has indicated that, one, we really need to focus on domestic talent and the transition to a new digital economy, an economy that expects people to be comfortable with technology, to be comfortable with significant amounts of information and data, to work in very different ways, is putting pressure on the education system, is putting pressure on employers to ensure that they have good intake systems, that they have effective work integrated training programs. My colleague outlined some of the initiatives that ISET is responsible for, and colleagues with Employment and Social Development who will follow will be able to speak to some of those. The idea of being able to bring in highly specialized talent is a key pillar of the global skills strategy, which colleagues at Immigration and Refugee Canada could also speak to. But you are exactly hitting on the core issue, which is, one, the number of people is really important, and getting as many people into the labor force as possible is critical for overall success. And two, to make sure that there's a marrying up of the skills and the training. And I would like to highlight a couple of very small programs, but very important ones that are at the crux of the inclusiveness of the innovation agenda. We have some programs that will be rolling out over the course of the fall with respect to accessible technology. So it's development of technologies for use by people who may have some kind of impediment in terms of, say, accessing the internet because of technological barriers. We have a digital literacy program that will be rolling out that will be looking to help ensure that excluded groups, whether it's people who have language difficulties, newly arrived Canadians, people who maybe aren't as comfortable in the digital world, get some of the training they need so that they're more confident and comfortable and safe and secure to do things like ongoing training or banking or healthcare services online. And as well are looking to further some of the work that the government can do with respect to STEM training for younger students as well as for post-secondary students.
Thank you all. We are going to have to cut it there. Mr. Connell will put you first on the next round. Our original worry was we would that giving you folks all the time we had was going to be too much time, but we certainly changed that in a hurry. Thank you very much to the witnesses that are here. We'll call up the Department of Employment and Social Development and other people from the Department of Finance. Thank you very much, witnesses. I know we had a discussion that wasn't on your topic in the beginning, but you have really provided us, I think, with very sound information, so thank you. Coffee? Oh, just give me a hot water. Okay, then starting the second panel. We missing. Okay, then from the Department of Employment and Social Development, Ms. Wernick, Associate Assistant Deputy Minister, Skills and Employment, Ms. Demers, Director General, Strategy and Partnership, Skills and Employment Branch, and Mr. Brown, Acting Director General, Employment Insurance Policy, Skills and Employment Branch. Thank you for coming. With the Department of Finance, Glenn Purvis, General Director, Federal, Provincial and Social Policy Branch. Welcome again, Glenn. And Mr. McMinn, a Senior Economist, Federal, Provincial Relations and Social Policy Branch. The floor is yours for an opening, and I will admit we're under a pretty tight time frame, and sorry for making you wait.
Merci. Bonjour.
Bonjour. Good afternoon, Chairman, distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to describe Employment and Social Development Canada skills and training programs. As you know, Canada is experiencing rather the effect of an aging population, rapid technological development, and globalization that have put a strain on productivity, growth, and competitiveness. Canadians are experiencing those changes through shifts in the labor market that are reshaping the nature of jobs and raising the level of skills and education required to be successful.
And on an inclusive labor market, where all Canadians are equipped with the skills that they need for the changing nature of work, and where employers are able to access the skilled labor they need to be innovative and competitive. I'm pleased to share with you some of the work that ESDC is doing to address these priorities. Let me start with youth. We know that Canada's prosperity will increasingly depend on creating a pathway to success in education and employment for young Canadians. Helping young people gain the skills, abilities, and work experience they need to find and maintain good employment will be key to laying the foundation for their success in the labor market over their lifetime. To tackle this challenge, ESDC invests approximately $330 million per year in the youth employment strategy. Le budget de 2016 a permis des investissements.
Budget 2016 made additional investments of over $278 million, bringing the total funding for 2016-17 to more than $606 million. With this investment, we doubled the number of Canada's summer jobs available for young Canadians, over 68,000 jobs.
$195.5 million over 3 years, starting in 2017-18, for additional work and skills development opportunities for youth. Combined with the 2016 measures, these investments will help more than 33,000 vulnerable youth develop the skills they need to find work or go back to school, create 15,000 new green jobs for young Canadians, and provide over 1,600 new employment opportunities for youth in the heritage sector. While a large part of Canada's success rests on supporting youth in successfully transitioning into the labour market, they still face barriers. To assess the barriers faced by vulnerable youth in finding and keeping jobs, an expert panel on youth employment was launched in October 2016 and has delivered its final report, which will guide our work on the renewal of the youth employment strategy. As well, the new Youth Service Initiative, which will be launched later this fall, will help young Canadians gain valuable work and life experience as they contribute through service to communities across Canada. This initiative will provide $105 million over 5 years and $25 million per year ongoing. An important way ESDC is supporting successful transitions from studies to the workplace is through the Work Integrated Learning Program, which was launched in August this year. The program provides funding support in the form of wage subsidies to employers to create new work placements for students enrolled in post-secondary education during their studies. So through this program, program, ESDC is developing stronger linkages and partnerships between industry and post-secondary institutions by creating these new work-integrated learning opportunities, particularly in science, technology, engineering, and math fields. There are additional incentives available for placements created for students in underrepresented groups, including women in STEM, Indigenous students, persons with disabilities, and recent immigrants. L'objectif du programme est de créer jusqu'à 10 000 nouveaux stages.
The program is expected to produce up to 10,000 new work placements over the next 4 years in several sectors, including biotechnology, information and communications technology, environment, aviation, and aerospace.
And productivity, and the department continues its efforts to facilitate access to post-secondary education by encouraging Canadians to save and by increasing access and the availability of student financial assistance. I'm pleased to report that further to Budget 2016 commitments, enhancements to the Canada Students' Loans Program to increase the amount and availability of Canada Students' grants, as well as the measures to make student debt more manageable, have all been implemented. Dans une économie en pleine évolution,
in a changing economy, Canadians throughout their life need to embrace continuous learning and upgrade their skills so they can find and keep good jobs.
Plan, the government aims to encourage Canadians to upgrade their skills through several measures, by expanding eligibility for Canada student grants and loans, by making it easier for adult or mature learners to qualify for Canada student grants and loans, by making better use of the flexibilities in the EI program that allow EI claimants to pursue full-time self-funded training while maintaining their EI status, and consultations with provinces and territories on these measures have begun with a view of an implementation date of the end of summer 2018, which will correspond with the start of the school year. Turning to other areas of importance for improving Canada's overall productivity, the need to generate opportunities for those who are traditionally underrepresented in the workplace remains of paramount importance. Maximizing the participation, better utilization of these underrepresented groups will be key to addressing anticipated labor force and skill shortages and to supporting long-term growth. ESDC provides a full continuum of services for Indigenous people across the country, from pre-employment training such as literacy, numeracy, and other essential skills, to more advanced technical training, to employment for skilled jobs through the Aboriginal Skills and Employment Training Strategy, or ASSETS. Over the past years, ASSETS has served over 300,000 clients, with over 100,000 finding employment, close to 50,000 returning to school. En réponse à la demande croissante des peuples autochtones,
in response to a growing demand from Indigenous peoples for skills development and job training, Budget 2017 announced an additional investment of $50 million for ASSETS.
Remains a top mandate priority for Minister Haidu. In the past year, we have engaged extensively with Indigenous partners to see how we can improve and strengthen Indigenous labor market programming through a longer-term strategy. Results of all of these consultations will be informing the renewal of the Aboriginal Skills and Employment Training Strategy post-2018 and will ensure that we are meeting the training needs and improving the labor market outcomes of Indigenous people. To help newcomer immigrants overcome integration barriers and fully participate in the labor market, Budget 27 proposed the creation of a targeted employment strategy for newcomers. The strategy will include improved pre-arrival supports, a loan program to assist with the cost of foreign credential recognition, and targeted measures to help them gain Canadian work experience. It will also complement the work already being done in the department with provinces and territories on foreign credential recognition. In addition to these federal programs, ESDC makes significant investments in skills and trainings through the labor market transfer agreements. Each year, the government invests nearly $3 billion through the agreements so that provinces and territories can offer a range of programs from skills training to career counseling to job search assistance to help the unemployed and underemployed improve their skills and get their next job. Budget 27 included significant additional funding and committed to reforming and consolidating the labor market transfer agreements to ensure that programs become more simple and more flexible to adapt to the changing jobs and skills needs. Key priorities under the new agreements will be to ensure that training and employment supports are more client-focused, more responsive to employer needs, and informed by strong performance measurement and innovation. Negotiations with provinces and territories on the next generation of agreements has begun and are ongoing. Further to speaking of skills training, the new Organization for Skills Development and Measurement announced in Budget 2017 is still at the design stages, but it has the potential to greatly influence future investments in programming. The Advisory Council on Economic Growth and the Forum of Labor Market Ministers have recommended new approaches to tackle skills gaps and support lifelong learning. The new organization will work in partnership with willing provinces and territories, the private sector, education institutions, and not-for-profits to address these issues by identifying the skills required by employers, by exploring new innovative approaches to skills development, and by sharing information on best practices and research to help inform future skills investments in programming. With a better understanding of the in-demand skills, the new organization will support the development, testing, evaluation of innovative approaches that will help employment training providers adapt to better meet employers' needs and evolving job demands. The department.
I'm starting to worry a little on time to get into question. Yeah.
No worries. I can skip this one section and move right along.
Okay.
So the last.
And if you can give us well, no, go ahead.
So the last area I wanted to talk about were some measures directed more at businesses. So to facilitate access to talent, we also operate the Job Bank, a website that connects employers and job seekers across the country, which has been recently modernized and improved. Also, in cases where qualified Canadians and permanent residents are not available, we have the Temporary Foreign Worker Program to ensure employers have access to skilled workers they need. And Budget 2017 announced the continued delivery of this program and the International Mobility Program. On June 12th, the new Global Talent Stream was launched across Canada, and it is a 24-month pilot project under the Temporary Foreign Worker Program that gives Canadian employers a faster and more predictable process for hiring specialized and highly skilled talent they need to scale, grow, and expand their businesses. So I would end in saying that the initiatives that have been introduced in the past 2 years have set the stage for immediate and long-term benefits for Canadians who are navigating the impacts of a rapid technological change and an evolving labor market. There's much work to do. We work in partnership with our key stakeholders, provinces, and territories. And we will continue to explore how to ensure that policies and programs are flexible and responsive to the needs of Canadian workers and businesses. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. We're ready to answer your questions.
Mr. Purvis, do you have a short statement as well?
I have no statement to make.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for that statement. I know there's a lot of information there, and we can pull that up on the record. I'll tell you, just sitting here for the two previous witnesses as well, I just wish there was a way for an MP to be able to pinpoint what programs across government are available, because I'll tell you, we're always searching. There's got to be a simpler way. You know, a constituent comes in, well, isn't there a program? And our staff and our offices, I know you folks know them, We don't know them all, and I doubt if you folks do either. And that's not under just this government, the other government as well. There's programs, and trying to put your finger on that one that may work for a constituent is always a problem. Anyway, Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the presenters today. It's a very good presentation. And I certainly appreciate the work you're doing in the area of youth and the underrepresented groups, especially the Indigenous populations. I heard many good things here today, and I think there's a real need to really focus on probably our fastest growing population in the country, the Indigenous people that have high rates of unemployment. We have large pockets across Canada of unemployed Indigenous people. It's estimated that we have well over 150,000 people sitting in Aboriginal communities that are unemployed in the West and including the North. And many challenges, of course, education levels, addictions, mobility, simple things as receiving, you would think is simple, but receiving a pardon for criminal record is something that's been raised. We certainly got to rethink and modernize our toolkit, as was mentioned earlier today. We need to focus on healthy people and healthy communities, and that means jobs. That means education for Aboriginal people, training and opportunity, and that's for all populations in all parts of Canada. I'm really encouraged by what you're doing here in terms of developing a long-term strategy. And my first question is to try to get an understanding or a feel of how much involvement and collaboration you're getting from the Aboriginal people across Canada, Indigenous people. Are they participating? Are you getting good feedback? How is that going?
So yes, thank you for that question. Indeed, we have been engaging extensively over the course of a full year. In fact, we were engaging with a view to developing the successor program for the ASETS, the strategy, which expires actually at the end of this year. And so we've had extensive engagement in that context with across the board, whether it's sort of regional, national, local delivery organizations have fed into that. We also had actually written submissions from each of the NIOs and proposals in terms of what they would like to see in the successor strategy. And we've even continue to have discussions in the context of the government's new permanent bilateral mechanisms, the nation-to-nation discussions. There's a series, there's working groups, there's ADM level discussions with each of the, I say NIOs, it's National Indigenous Organizations, as we explore how to respond to the commitments that are being made in the broader reconciliation agenda. So there is complete sort of collaboration and joint priority setting and working together on the successor strategy right now.
Yes, I just wanted to know if you could just quickly tell us what the impact of the ASETS program has been up to now, and what do you expect it to grow to in the new successor program?
So to date, the programs have served over 400,000 clients with close to 133,000 finding work and more than 60,000 returning to school. One of the changes we're exploring with the successor strategy is potential to measure and capture clients who move up the skills spectrum. So you can see from the results measurement that we're doing, it's quite binary. It's either they went back to school or they got a job. What our Indigenous partners are telling us, and which makes a lot of sense, is for a lot of the clients that they are serving, success is moving from very low literacy to higher literacy and numeracy, and that isn't being captured. So as we move people up the skills continuum, we need those longer-term interventions for quite a few of the clients. And we need to align the services that we offer with their personal aspirations, whether it's to go back to school, to go to more technical job, et cetera, et cetera. So we've had a lot of success with the program. As you can see, the statistics on jobs found and returns to school. And now we want to capture and do more work in the full skills continuum to reach those clients who are starting from the furthest back.
Thank you both, Mr. Poilievre.
Actually, Mr. Kamiuk will be
Okay,
leading us today.
Mr. Kamish.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Peut-être en premier, je veux juste mentionner que la version...
First, I'd like to mention that the French and English versions are not the same. For your speaking notes, Ms. Wernick, on page 13 on the version that I received, there's a section that says CMT space. Well, all I can say is that we will look at this carefully, and I apologize for the disparity for the two.
Council that was being set up, the LMI information that was going to be collected. I wanted to know, did you consult with the different HR associations from every province before moving ahead with this, and are they involved in the production of this LMI?
So I know there was an extensive collaboration with provinces and consultation. I'm just trying to see if I can find you something more specific on that.
Mr. Mers, or okay, whoever wants to go.
Go ahead, yeah.
Go ahead, Catherine.
With respect to the specific organizations that were consulted, this is something we could probably obtain for you as a follow-up, but certainly there...
Not just to me, but...
C'est ça. Oui. In terms of the organization, so there have been over a 2-year period, discussions, collaboration with stakeholders on the creation of the council. And that has been done in partnership with provinces and territories, and so really broad-based discussions.
So on this LMI information, though, you have to be aware then that in Western Canada, there is a private sector LMI information being collected by the different HR associations. There's an Alberta HR Trends Report and a Western Canada Trends Report, and an individual trends report being produced for every single province by associations, which include about 20,000 human resources practitioners under the certified professionals in human resources. So is this duplicating that effort, or is this trying to replace it, or is it competing with it, or is it something new?
It is meant to work in complementarity with all the organizations across Canada that produce various levels of labor market information. So it is really an opportunity to bring together the various information sources that are collected by sector organizations, through Statistics Canada, through various institutions, educational institutions as well. So various holders of labor market information. The idea is really to provide an opportunity to offer a common platform for access to labor market information for Canadians.
On this council?
The council is made up of representatives of federal government, provinces, and provincial and territorial governments, and with the advice of a national stakeholder advisory panel.
So wouldn't you want to have included in that HR professionals, people who are certified in the profession, who make hiring decisions, know what the labor market is like, do the hiring and firing and skills assessment in the workplaces for large, small, medium-sized organizations?
So I think, as mentioned, the National Stakeholder Advisory Panel that will be established to support the council will be comprised of HR professionals, could be part of it. It's experts, it's the students, it's workers, it's educational institution, Indigenous organizations, business organizations. So we're trying to make this advisory council cover as broad a spectrum as possible.
And if you could, Tom.
So my last question was, it says that it's going to start in the fall. When? Is there a specific time? The fall has already started, so October, November?
Is expected to be announced soon this fall, the creation of the council, and around the Forum of Labor Market Ministers meeting. So it's in the context of an upcoming meeting of labor market ministers, where the details of the creation of the council and the members will be made available very soon this fall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dussault.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you to our witnesses for appearing before our committee. My question is somewhat in line with what I said earlier on with respect to growth, exclusive growth, which is being offered. We want to see it become inclusive and be offered to all Canadians. In the same vein as my last question then, with respect to the labor market and to the job market, I'd like to know what is the current picture of the labor market right now. What are the needs that appear in the labor market in terms of businesses? Because many say that there is a lack of qualified labor for certain businesses. Do you have a national picture that you have established on the labor force that's available? And is there an analysis of the future needs of the employment sector? What type of strategy do you have to be able to cover the gap that may well exist in the future? There is information that is presently available on the situation of the labor market and the job market, the availability of jobs in Canada through the job market site that is managed by employers, by the departments as well, in conjunction with each other. The department has made many changes to improve access to this national job bank, and it is targeting information on specific markets, local regions. If I am in this area, what jobs are available? What are the salaries that are offered by employers? What type of diplomas are necessary to be able to access this type of job? They want to make it more available, and not just for those who are seeking a job, but also for employers who are looking for talent and actually looking for workers for a specific region. This national job bank is something that is offered. I can say that it is also over the national level, that jobs also are posted. But through this job bank, we are better able to make the information more readily accessible through the data that is being developed through the regions, through the provinces, through the employers, all of this on joint platforms. Also, we are targeting an improvement in quality and the relevancy of the information that is available with a better methodology, something that is more constant, more consistent, and that will be of greater benefit to people because it will be arising from experts throughout Canada. It's not just application and an offer of a job for the time that remains. I don't know, Mr. Pers, if you were the person responsible for this program, but I want to say that given the fact that we are in pre-budget consultations, I imagine you are the one that's involved in the equalization program. What is, to your mind, the situation? Is the formula for equalization at the present time one that is adequate? Thank you for your question. I will answer, if you don't mind, in English.
Under the Act, the Minister of Finance's authority to provide under the equalization program expires March 31st, 2019. So we're currently looking at the current equalization framework, and we're conducting as normal in these instances when there is a sunset. We're looking at the framework to see if it continues to serve the interests of the Federation in the best way possible. We continue to go through that review, and through that we have had discussions with provinces and territories at the officials level, of course, and we continue to do our work on that. So it'd be too early for me to sort of signal at this juncture any indications of any potential changes, if at all.
Merci.
Thank you, Pierre. We will have to adjourn there. I just couldn't help sitting here and thinking, you know, you were here, some of us, for the earlier discussion by the Finance Committee member on a motion, and we are pretty good at make work projects for ourselves. Maybe ESDC could learn something from that. We can make more work and pile it on next week. Anyway, hopefully that'll be all for the better. I do want to thank you for waiting, and thank you for your presentations. Meeting adjourned. We'll meet tomorrow.